I think that people also fail to account for the fact that pretty much everything in the economy is driven based on growth, right? So, you brought up housing. I know you even started to get into this topic because you were, if I remember correctly, you were looking at forecasts for car retailers and things like that.
Yeah.
But if you think of every single market, it's all growth based. There's all the assumption that, okay, well, the population grows and there's a demand that's at least consistent but slightly growing, and that next generation helps to support the older generations. People age out, the young ones come up. But once you start to get that inverted pyramid, and when you consider the exponential, well, in this case, not growth, but decline, then there's this precipitous fall off, which I think right now, because the world's population is still growing, and because many nations' populations are still growing, it seems like everything is fine. It seems like, okay,
Yeah.
nothing to be concerned about because people are not thinking about the median age and the impact that's going to have on things you mentioned, pensions, social security, something like the NHS, immigration. That's a big one, right? Because at the moment, in many nations, the idea is like, okay, well, let's keep just bringing in more and more immigrants from wherever to bolster the economy and keep the numbers up. But it's this sort of, with that causes its own potential frictions and problems. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
quite a mess. And it's interesting because I'm by nature, I'm not a worrier at all. I'm like 0% neuroticism. I don't worry much about many things at all. But when I think about genuine things I'm concerned about with the world and with humanity, this particular issue in recent years has been something where I'm like, okay, I think this isn't like a doomsday massive warping of the data and trying to come up with a worst case. It's just like, okay, well, the numbers are telling a very clear picture. And as you've said, the main thing is people need to be aware of this. So
Yes.
at a minimum, there needs to be mitigation. There needs to be thinking of, okay,
Yes.
how are we going to run the economy? How are we going to run certain programs? Where is our society and our culture and our nation going
Yes.
if the median age becomes 10 years older than it is, or
Yeah.
if we've got more people over the age of 60 than we have people under the age of 20, what does that mean for our society? All these kind of things. It's like, I know you're putting it on people's radar, but it seems like by the time maybe it hits the mainstream at this current rate, it's just gonna be too late if people don't sort of wake up to it earlier.
I agree with all of that. I actually listened to your podcast with Elon a little earlier, and I was pleased he made the point about he worries that there's going to be this, malaise that people are going to give up and maybe have even fewer children. And that's a fundamental concern for me. And it's one of the reasons I've stayed in Japan, because I think Japan has a potential to show other countries a possible way out. And that's me being a real optimist, by the way, but it is possible. But here's what has to happen. This solution is going to take 50 years. It's going to take at least one generation to stabilize birth rates in these countries. And then it's going to take another generation for the greater number of relative children to grow up and enter the workplace, and the larger number of relative older people to pass on. Now, if people understand this is a 50-year problem, you don't have to wait for 50 years for it to get better. You will start to see it getting better after probably 20. Now, if you're a teenager today, or in your 20s even, maybe your 30s, that's a good time horizon for your retirement period. I'm beyond that. So, my point being, I think younger people are invested in this enough if they can see a way forward, if they can have hope year by year, decade by decade. And that hope has actually come in the conversations I've had from young people who are, quite frankly, utterly shocked by the scale of this problem, shocked by unplanned childlessness. We don't tell people that, by the way, not only do you have to study really hard and establish your career, you probably also need to think about meeting someone. And I'm going to throw a stat in here. It's a little bit off topic, but just for context, in all the countries are researched, only half of women turning 30 without a child ever become mothers. And it's not just fertility. It's not having a partner. It's having a breakup. It's waiting to get the career in place. Once you tell young people stats like that, I can see them, thinking, well, wait a minute, I need to prioritize. So I do worry about the long term. I worry about the state of societies. But I think we can actually, if we have a collective conversation, I mean, the solution here is what? Immigration is not the solution. It is not a solution for this. It's a temporary plaster to this. It's from the UK.
Bandage.
So, Band-Aid, that's the one. So, yeah. So, and why is that? Because immigrants, they default to, by second generation, the same number of children as the host nation. That's evident, because look at countries like the US, well below replacement level, but Germany, which has had high levels of relative immigration going back to 50 years or more. These countries have very low birth rates. It's not just Japan, which tends not to have immigration. Immigration, therefore, is something that you need to replenish every single year. And immigrants get old and, of course, need supported. So, that never ends. If immigration is your solution, you can never stop that. One of the most surprising things to me is another uncomfort I had never thought about until I went to Nepal. And I went to a university to talk about population dynamics. And all I wanted to talk about primarily was migration, people leaving Nepal and what it's done to communities there, because all the young talent is leaving. And so that was a whole side to immigration that I selfishly, I think I might say that we're just not considering it all. What is the impact on these other countries?
Brain drain is a huge issue.
Yes.
I mean, my family background is, we're originally from Nigeria. So, I'm British and Nigerian. And if I look at Nigeria, I mean, that is definitely one of the problems. The country has many issues, but brain drain is a real issue, because if you are raised in Nigeria and you go to school and you go to university and you get a good degree, sure, some people stay, but a lot of people are like, okay, I'm off to the UK now. I'm off to the USA. I'm off to Canada. I'm off to the Gulf countries, wherever it is. So you have this consistent thing where many of the most educated, most competent, smartest people are constantly leaving. And great. In the USA, they're like, oh, awesome. We're getting more Nigerian doctors. Fantastic. We're getting all these smart programmers from India. Great. We're getting all these people, whatever it is. But again, if you think of it more holistically,
yes,
on both sides of the situation, in both the new country and the original country, you now potentially, again, not everything's an issue with this, right? I'm super pro migration, right? I think people should generally
I'm
go
an
where they're
immigrant
treated
myself,
best.
so
Yes. I think people should generally go where they're treated best. But at scale, some of these things are not sustainable. Then you have, considerations about culture and integration and assimilation and language and all of these other things. And I think when it comes to immigration as well, we live in this funny time where people like to pretend things are just, binary issues. I've generally found in most nations, like everywhere, most people are in favor of immigration within reason, right? It doesn't matter the nation. If you just brought in, 5 million, 10 million people in 1 year from foreign countries, generally local people are not going to like it. If you did that in Japan, the Japanese people won't like it. If you do it in England, people won't like it. You do it in Germany, and so on and so forth. If it's slower and there's assimilation and you're bringing in good people who are not causing problems, most people agree, yeah, immigration is generally a good thing, but it's a matter of scale, speed, and type. But as you said before, when it comes to this particular issue, at best, it's a very temporary solution, and it has some serious trade-offs.
I think there's another factor here as well, which is if I were a skilled potential immigrant, probably already, but more and more, I'm going to be very choosy about which countries I would consider migrating to. So would I go to Italy right now, looking at, right now there's around 900,000 people aged 50 in Italy, less than 400 births. It's a huge birth gap, as I call it. Do I want to retire in Italy, or would other countries be better? So, I can see countries bidding against each other to encourage, a free car, free, whatever it might be. The whole dynamics migration will change here. So again, just assuming that there's a tap that you can turn on at whatever level you think is appropriate. I don't like to tell any country or anyone what the right number for immigration is. I just like to point out it is not a solution. It's, it's a very, very temporary thing that really almost distracts from the core issue here, because unless we get to replacement level, there is no future.